Oh, hello everybody, Adam Clery, 442. England are in the semi-finals of the European Championships. They just beat Switzerland. Perhaps you may have watched that. Before we start, very important, I want you to look at my face. We'll get a little zoom going here. Can you see all of this? You see just the crow's feet and the aging and just all of that, right? I was 21 when this tournament started. Right then, okay, so a man who has stood here before you and repeatedly said that England cannot keep getting away with this now has to try and explain in some kind of detailed way why they got away with it once again. And the big revelation of this video, small spoiler, might be that getting away with it is the whole plan. So you're smart, you probably just saw that last shot and were like, you've got that formation all wrong, Adam. It wasn't the normal 4-2-3-1. That's right, so I'm going to show you how they changed it specifically for this game by moving to a back three. Now with Mark Gay suspended, these three shifted across here. We had 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗥𝗔 in for him, John Stones in the middle, Kyle Walker in that right centre-back position. You remember from that World Cup, he randomly played there that time, and we all thought what we were going to get was 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏𝗏 at right wing-back, where he would be very natural and very good, and 𝗵𝗫𝗧𝗏𝗏 at left wing-back, where he would be very natural and very good, Mainoo and Rice in the middle, and then a very narrow double 10 situation with Foden and Bellingham just behind Kane. But we did not get that, and when the game kicked off and I saw that hadn't happened, I went that much insane. What Gareth Southgate actually elected to do was to keep 𝗘𝗫𝗏𝗏𝗏 on the left-hand side, one of England's biggest problems in the whole tournament, but he did that so that 𝗵𝗫𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏 could stay on the right. And it was maddening at the time, but as the game went on, fair play, it made a lot of sense. Now, before we get into the who's and the whats and the whys of this England side, I'm going to tell you why they changed to a back three. It wasn't actually to solve any of their own problems, it was to mitigate against what Switzerland do very, very well. So the Swiss, throughout the tournament, have played with this very narrow attacking front three. We'll just put them on the pitch here. And then two very aggressive wing backs. And what that allows them to do is to press all the central options, close down the goalkeeper, and then shut off all the options to the fullbacks at the same time, forcing teams to try and play through the middle or kick long. And we also know, because you probably watched some of the other videos we've done this tournament, England absolutely suck at trying to play through the middle because too much relies on 𝗘𝗫𝗏𝗏𝗏 and they don't really trust him to do it. Or when they kick long, Jordan Pickford's kicking accuracy long is quite bad. So Switzerland were always going to set up this way. And the other reason Switzerland do this when they have the ball is it allows you to get these sort of 2-on-1 situations very easily in the wide areas. They isolate the fullbacks and both the wing back and the wide forward. They float out there, they get in behind, it creates chances centrally. England would have been ripped to shreds with this. But by theoretically going to a back three with your own wing backs instead, it sort of matches this situation at 1v1, means you only need to find one pass to the two central midfielders to get out of this situation. It should theoretically cancel all that out. And to be fair, if nothing else about that England performance was any good, and you could very easily make the argument that nothing else about that England performance was very good, this did nullify Switzerland's major form of attack. They were unable to win the ball back in any of these areas. They very rarely turned the ball over in a dangerous position, and eventually what it led them to doing was sitting off England a little bit more, allowing them to have the ball at the back. And I promise I'm not trying to gaslight you here and saying the performance was good. It was utterly minging in large parts, but as well as this working quite well, it had two very good knock-on effects for England when they were on the ball. First off, in a way that didn't really have any impact at all, it did finally stop Phil Foden and Jude Bellingham basically just playing completely on top of each other. Again, if you've watched other videos on the channel, I keep doing this thing where I'll show you Bellingham's heat map and I'll show you Foden's heat map, and they're more or less exactly the same thing. They both end up in this sort of left channel just outside the box, not really able to get on the ball, nobody really offering a pass, and they're just getting in each other's way. But finally, because England had gone with this setup, which necessitated two 10s rather than this just sort of awkward three they have across this space, it put Foden over on this right-hand side where he's far more comfortable, and this was Jude Bellingham's heat map, almost exactly the same to how it's been in all the other games, but this, finally, Christmas, was Phil Foden's heat map. It's exactly the same, but on the opposite side. It's balance! Now, believe it or not, having pleasing looking heat maps on a YouTube channel counts for actually nothing in a game of football. So while this was a much better use of both these two players, they didn't really impact the game in the final third. They didn't get any good chances. They didn't even make any good chances. So while it was better, didn't really make any difference. But the change here that did make a difference, and had England been slightly better in the final third, would have seen them probably comfortably ahead in the first half, and certainly up until Switzerland got on top, was what it did for Bukayo Saka. Now again, another major talking point we've had in England videos is that Saka routinely receives the ball up here somewhere when Walker's sort of brought it up that side, and he's doing it with his back to goal. He's doing it with a defender right behind him, and he's constantly forced to play it back into the centre or go back towards a safer zone. But the crucial thing is here that because Saka is playing right wing back instead of sort of right forward, it means that his major responsibility in this game is the opposing left wing back as opposed to the left-sided defender. And that means that when he does get the right side of him, when he slips that marker, there's nobody directly in front of him to close him down immediately. So when he was receiving the ball, he was doing so with finally a little bit of space ahead of him. And of course, you've probably played football. The major difference between receiving the ball with space in front of you versus receiving the ball with a man up your arse is that you're facing the right way and you can actually have a bit of fun with it. And several times in this game, the one thing England were genuinely doing well was they were isolating Bukayo Saka against either Ricardo Rodriguez or 𝗕𝗓𝗍𝗂, and he was doing them every single time. Presumably using the fact that they were expecting him to come in on his left foot and have a shot. More on that later. He kept going around the outside and getting to positions by the byline where he could get some kind of cutback. And the reason I said if England was slightly better in the final third, this would have led to goals, is because if England had been slightly better in the final third, this would have led to goals. But it didn't, weirdly. In fact, you probably can't even remember a single good chance on goal England got as a result of this. And there's a very painful, but we must talk about it reason why that happened. This is a graph of the average positions England's starting 11 had during that game. And what this means is it just basically shows you not where they were standing or not where they were doing nothing, but where they were getting their touches of the ball. And it paints a very easy to understand picture of this changing system. You can see the back three are here. There's Walker, 𝗕𝗁 and Stones. We expect them to be there. And there's Bukayo Saka providing all the width on the right-hand side. He was getting really far up the pitch from wing-back. Kieran Trippier doing the same on the left-hand side. We've got the nice sort of quasi-box midfield of 𝗦𝗶𝗴h, Stones, Foden, and you've already seen what I'm about to point at here. You're way ahead of me. That's Harry Kane. That is not where a centre-forward in any system should be playing. And I know it's not my first time watching an England game or even a Harry Kane game. I know that a large part of what he does is he drops away from that centre-forward area. He receives the ball in the midfield. He goes looking for it. He creates that space that famously, like your Sons and your whoever he's got a buy-in, they can run into. But the key thing about him doing that, so when he gets on the ball, the passing then has to be incisive. And this, rather alarmingly, is Harry Kane's pass map. It's okay for him to drop away from the centre-forward position and have this really deep thing on the average positions map, but you've got to have passes. And this isn't even just like first half, second half. This is the entire time he was on the pitch. That's every single pass he was able to make. 9 passes in like the 110 minutes he was on the pitch. And I know there's like multiple different kinds of centre forwards. There's no one way to play that position. But if this is your contribution in terms of passing, then you need to constantly be looking to get on the end of things as they're created for you. But like here's even another example of it. Saka's there. There is a huge space where your centre forward should be running. And Kane just ambles, he trots, he doesn't really put himself in that position. And the longer the game went on, the more of a problem this became because England were having no joy with Trippier down the left. Foden and Bellingham weren't creating anything in the centre. Saka was their only one route to goal. And the longer the game goes on, of course, Switzerland start getting a bit wiser to it. They made substitutions designed to shut that area off. It gave England nothing going forward. And inevitably, if your routes to goal, if your routes up the pitch begin to dry up, you cede territory, you cede possession, you cede momentum. And again, as you watched it, the longer that second half went on, the more they retreated, the more Switzerland started to dominate the ball, the more it felt like a goal was coming. And it did, didn't it? Now, I'll hold my hands up here. I'm not particularly dignified when I watch any game of football in a pub, but several times before the goal, England found themselves in this exact same position. They weren't able to get Saka in advanced areas anymore. They were pretty much dropping back to a flat 5. And as much of an oversimplification as it might sound, you can't keep inviting pressure on like that and expect something not to give. And it was very unfortunate, the goal. It takes a little nick off John Stones on its way through, but it had absolutely been coming. And it all comes from the fact that England could not get out. They had no sort of focal point at the top of the pitch, and their best way up the pitch had been closed off. And that, and it's okay to admit it, in a fair and just world would have been the story of how Switzerland upset mighty England and are through to the semi-final with a thoroughly deserved 1-0 win. But the one thing they could not compensate for, and I can't believe I'm saying this, was vibes. As a result, after that Switzerland game, England just abandoned all structure, they abandoned all forms of build-up, they got rid of all the cohesion, and he just threw on a load of players he thought could make a difference. And one of the benefits about having a squad full of really good footballers is that can work. And all of a sudden this woke them up, it moved them up the pitch. The shift in scoreline gave Switzerland an excuse to sit off a little bit. No sooner had they scored did England flood the Swiss half, flood the Swiss third, and just made something happen, almost out of nothing. Saka finally gets another chance to get on the ball in that sort of final third, sort of inside right area. But for the first time in the game, rather than sitting off and being slightly negative, Declan Rice decides, well, I've got to get in the box. So he makes a run underlapping him, which pulls this defender away. And I have absolutely zero doubt in my mind whatsoever that because Saka had had these left backs on chips for the entire game going around the outside, they allow him slightly more space than they should on the inside. And what happens next is nothing tactical. There's no clever sort of strategic element to it whatsoever. It's just that Bukayo Saka gets a little bit of space, and he is right now one of, if not the best right-sided attackers in the world, and he bails them out. And just like that, before you've even had time to send that Southgate out tweet, England have gone from a system that is working well but doing nothing to a system that simply does not exist and has done something. And just if you want like proof of that system not even existing after all those substitutions, right? This is England's average position map in extra time. Legitimately, if you can tell me what the plan is with this, because you've got a line of 5 players here and a ball of 5 players here, you can have my job. If you can explain that, you're better at this than I am. You've got Shaw, Rice, Bellingham, Eze and Palmer just all in an amorphous blob over here on the left. And you've just got this nice love train of Stones, Walker, Alexander-Arnold, Saka and Toney. There is no clear idea for this whatsoever. And if you were watching that extra time thinking, why do we not have the same control over this that we did against Slovakia? Why is Switzerland looking like the better team in extra time? It was because the system had completely gone. England's normal sort of plan of restricting teams and being very solid defensively had gone out the window to get that equalising goal. And they were, do not get it twisted, very fortunate to ride out that entire 30 minutes and get it to penalties. But the other major benefit of just having loads and loads of really good players is that in a penalty shootout, that can count. Cole Palmer, Bukayo Saka and Ivan Toney are the penalty takers at their Premier League sides, and all 3 of them are renowned for being really good at them. Jude Bellingham and Trent Alexander-Arnold are not the penalty takers at their clubs, but they play for Liverpool and Real Madrid and are undoubtedly 2 of the finest technical players at 2 of the best teams in the world. And that's why it absolutely boils my piss when people call penalties a lottery, because when you look at the players on the respective sides there taking those kicks, it should be obvious which team has the advantage. And yes, of course, some of the best players in the world, they've all missed penalties. You're guaranteed nothing, but football is about playing the percentages. It's about giving yourself a chance to do something rather than a guarantee. And just again, look at these names in a row. Who would you fancy to score every single penalty, and who would you fancy to miss 1 or 2? And also, just because my adrenaline levels are finally starting to return to normal now, we should probably try and have a laugh about things where we can. The penalties should have actually been slightly more comfortable than they were, because this picture that's now doing the rounds of Jordan Pickford's water bottle told him the correct way to go for 𝗕𝗏𝗏 𝗏𝗏𝗏. But it also told him the correct way to go for Fabian Schär. And he just, for whatever reason, either didn't read that part or forgot. If you dive this way, That's a very savable penalty. But just as one final thing, because you come to this channel for things resembling insight, so I might as well try and give you some. Trent Alexander-Arnold's final penalty. A player who has had untold amounts of pressure on him through the season. He's been criticised for some of England's early poor performances. He's now taking the pressure spot kick and the whole thing looked like he was just doing it in the park with a bunch of kids. And that is because how many times have I got to say it? Stop before you take the penalty. Take a deep breath. Do it in your own time. He waits nearly 8 seconds from the referee blowing his whistle before he takes that kick. And tell me that is not one of the coolest, most just beautiful penalties you've ever seen. Does this mean that England were good today? No, it absolutely does not. Does it mean that it's all finally come together and we're getting the kind of performance out of these players that we feel they're capable of? No, it doesn't. Does it mean that Gareth Southgate is managing the team well and guiding them through in a composed and sort of well thought out way? Also, no. It's still a complete show. But if I just could be so bold, right? If you've watched England, probably even if you support like a club outside the mega clubs, right? You know what it's like when you come up against a good team and even when they don't play well, they just find a way. It's not like a made up thing, it happens in football. I never thought I'd see the day when you could maybe start to think England were that team. Because even when they're not playing well, they're not giving away loads of chances and they're finding the goals they need. And I don't know, maybe I'm supping on the old copium far too hard here, but after that group stage, everyone said, well, they're going to need to be better if they want to get past against Slovakia, and they were ever so slightly, and they just about got through. And then everybody said, well, they're going to have to step it up again when they play Switzerland, and they did just about, and they got through. So whatever test awaits them in the second semi-final, which I'm looking, the TV's on the screen now, is probably the Netherlands, they're going to need to step it up again. But that is also a team that on the day, they might just find a way against. So yeah, that's it. That's the video. England changed their system, and in some ways, Saka, it worked, and in some ways, Foden and Bellingham, it still didn't. And in some ways, the width down the side, it solved the problem, and in other ways, Harry Kane's just non-appearance at centre-forwards, it raised all new ones. It's fun, this. But that is, as ever, just my opinion, and I'm sure you've got your own. So please do let me know what you thought of that England performance. Would you make more changes? Would you stick with this system? All thoughts, feelings, comments, emotions, poetry and verse, welcome down below. And if you think you're too good for the comment section, look at you go. You can get me across all the socials here at 𝗕𝗫𝗍𝗓𝗍𝗓𝗍𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓 bag. That's my laptop is right here. It's the season preview one because you don't want to admit it, but that season's going to be here before you know it. And in the meantime, Adam Monk's curry's just arrived, so I'm going to see if I can nick a Peshwari naan or something. I've been Adam Clery. I don't know what that was, and I'll see you soon. What's that? Is it pakora? A bhaji? Oh, God, it's hot.
Quite nice.
Oh, not bad, that.
Oh, wow.
Bye.